At some point after 60, many men stop chasing and start evaluating, not out of bitterness, not because relationships failed them, but because priorities shift. What felt essential at 40, companionship, partnership, building a life with someone, starts to feel optional. And that shift isn't resignation, it's clarity. After decades of marriage, dating, or navigating the complexities of long-term relationships, some men arrive at a place where independence feels less like a compromise and more like a deliberate choice, where the freedom to structure life entirely on their own terms outweighs the perceived benefits of partnership. This isn't about rejecting connection. It's about recognizing that connection, at this stage, comes with costs that may no longer feel worth paying. Energy costs, emotional costs, the slow erosion of autonomy that happens when two lives merge, even when that merging is well-intentioned. And so they choose differently. Not because they've given up, but because they've gained something more valuable than companionship: peace, stability, the ability to wake up each day and live according to their own rhythm without negotiation, compromise, or the constant recalibration that relationships require. Today, we're going to explore 7 specific advantages of being a single senior man, not to argue that everyone should choose this path, but to validate those who have, and to offer clarity to those who are considering it, because the decision to remain single after 60 is not failure. It's often one of the most intentional choices a man can make. Single life at 30 looks nothing like single life at 65. At 30, being alone can feel temporary, uncertain, like something you're moving through on the way to something else. But at 65, singleness often feels complete, intentional, chosen. Part of this shift is physiological. Stress tolerance declines with age. What you could handle at 40, emotional volatility, relational conflict, constant adaptation, becomes harder to manage at 65. Your nervous system no longer rebounds the way it once did. Recovery from stress takes longer. And the cumulative effect of chronic relational tension becomes harder to ignore. Energy conservation becomes a priority. You have less of it, and spending what you do have on managing someone else's moods, navigating conflict, or compromising your preferences starts to feel like a poor allocation. Then there's emotional bandwidth. After years, sometimes decades of investing in relationships, some men simply reach a point where they no longer want to do the emotional labor required to maintain them, not because they're incapable, but because they've already done it, and they're done. Financial stability also plays a role. By 60, most men have built something modest or substantial, and protecting it becomes more important than expanding it. Relationships introduce financial entanglement, shared expenses, merged assets, potential legal complications. And for men who've worked hard to achieve stability, introducing that level of risk feels increasingly unappealing. But perhaps the most significant shift is lifestyle control. After spending much of life accommodating others, careers, families, partners, many men arrive at a stage where they simply want to live on their own terms, entirely, without negotiation. And that desire, when honored, creates a level of peace that partnership often cannot. If this resonates, subscribe to Femme Psychology with Emma. We explore life stage psychology with clarity, not noise. The first advantage of being single after 60 is complete control of your time. Time, at this stage of life, feels different. There's less of it. And what remains becomes precious in ways it wasn't before. How you spend it, who you spend it with, what you prioritize, matters more than it ever has. In relationships, time is negotiated. You coordinate schedules. You accommodate someone else's preferences. You plan around their needs, their routines, their expectations. And while that's manageable when you're younger and energy is abundant, it becomes exhausting when you're older and energy is finite. Being single eliminates that negotiation entirely. You wake up when you want. You structure your day however serves you. You don't explain your choices. You don't coordinate. You don't compromise. Imagine a quiet morning. Coffee exactly how you like it. Silence if you want it. No conversation you're obligated to have. no agenda beyond your own. You spend the morning reading or walking or simply sitting. No one is waiting for you. No one needs your attention. The day is entirely yours. That autonomy, simple as it sounds, is one of the most underrated aspects of single life. Because time, when it's fully yours, feels expansive. You're not managing someone else's schedule. You're not adjusting to their rhythm. You're simply living at your own pace. And at 65, that pace is often slower, more deliberate, less rushed. And being able to honor that without external pressure is a form of freedom that partnership rarely allows. The second advantage is financial stability without entanglement. By 60, most men have achieved some level of financial structure: retirement savings, a home, investments, social security, pension. Whatever the specifics, there's usually a foundation that's been carefully built and protected over decades. Relationships introduce complexity to that foundation: shared expenses, combined accounts, legal claims to assets, spousal benefits, estate complications. And while those things can be managed, they introduce risk that didn't exist when finances were solely yours. Being single preserves simplicity. Your money is yours. Your assets are yours. Your decisions about how to allocate resources don't require consensus. You're not merging bank accounts. You're not discussing every purchase. You're not navigating the tension that often arises when two people have different financial values or habits. There's also the matter of predictability. When you're single, your financial future is easier to forecast. You know what's coming in. You know what's going out. You can plan with clarity because there are no variables introduced by another person's needs, preferences, or financial decisions. Consider the alternative. You enter a relationship. Initially, finances are separate, but over time, they merge. She has expenses. You cover some of them. She has debt. It becomes part of the conversation. She has expectations about lifestyle that differ from yours. And suddenly, the financial stability you spent years building feels less stable. Or worse, the relationship ends. And now you're navigating division of assets, legal disputes, claims to property or retirement funds you assumed were protected. Being single eliminates all of that. Your financial life remains entirely within your control. And that control, at this stage, is one of the most valuable forms of security you can have. The third advantage is emotional stability. Relationships, even healthy ones, introduce emotional variability, conflict, mood shifts, the ongoing work of managing not just your own emotional state, but someone else's. And while that's part of partnership, it's also exhausting. Being single eliminates that variability. Your home becomes a place of emotional predictability. There's no tension to navigate when you walk through the door. No mood you have to assess and adjust to. No emotional labor required just to maintain baseline peace. Your stress levels, already higher after 60 due to aging physiology, remain lower because you're not absorbing someone else's stress. You're not managing relational conflict. You're not cycling through the emotional ups and downs that come with intimate partnership. There's also the matter of cortisol. Chronic stress, like the kind that comes from ongoing relational tension, keeps cortisol elevated. And elevated cortisol, sustained over time, damages your health. Sleep, immune function, cardiovascular health. All of it suffers when stress becomes chronic. But when you're single, your home environment is calm, predictable, under your control, and that calm translates directly into better health outcomes. Imagine coming home after a long day. The house is exactly as you left it. There's no tension waiting, no conversation you're obligated to have, no emotional processing required. You can simply be, rest, recharge, without needing to manage anyone else's emotional state first. That kind of stability, quiet, consistent, entirely within your control is one of the most underappreciated benefits of single life. The fourth advantage is identity reinforcement. Relationships by nature require compromise. You adjust who you are, not dramatically, but incrementally to accommodate another person. You soften edges. You prioritize their preferences. You let go of certain things to maintain harmony. And while that's normal in partnership, it also means parts of your identity get muted over time. Hobbies you used to love but stopped pursuing because they didn't fit into the relationship. Friendships that faded because they weren't shared. Travel you wanted to do but never did because it required too much coordination. Being single allows you to reclaim all of that. You pursue what interests you without needing to justify it. You spend time with whoever you want. You travel where you want, when you want. You structure your life entirely around what brings you fulfillment, rather than what maintains relational harmony. For many men, this is the first time in decades they've had that kind of freedom, and what they discover is that they have interests, passions, and desires they'd forgotten about. Things that got buried under years of obligation and compromise. Maybe it's woodworking. Maybe it's traveling alone to places you've always wanted to see. Maybe it's deepening friendships with other men who share your interests. Maybe it's simply having the space to think, to read, to explore ideas without needing to explain yourself. That freedom to be fully yourself, without adjustment, without performance, without compromise, is one of the most powerful aspects of single life after 60. The fifth advantage is freedom from performance pressure. Relationships, even unconsciously, involve performance. You're presenting a version of yourself that maintains attraction. That keeps things interesting. That doesn't disappoint. And while that's manageable when you're younger, it becomes exhausting as you age. You no longer want to perform. You want to simply be, without needing to maintain a certain image, without needing to prove you're still interesting, still engaged, still worth someone's attention. Being single eliminates that pressure entirely. You're not trying to impress anyone. You're not seeking validation. You're not managing how you're perceived. You're just existing as you are, flaws, habits, preferences, without needing anyone's approval. There's also the matter of physical intimacy. For some men, the expectation of maintaining sexual performance becomes a source of stress. Being single removes that expectation. You're not managing someone else's needs or your own perceived inadequacy. You're simply living without that dimension of relational pressure. And while this might sound like giving up, it's actually the opposite. It's choosing authenticity over performance, presence over effort, the freedom to be exactly who you are without needing to maintain a version of yourself designed to keep someone else interested. That freedom is deeply restful. And rest at this stage of life is far more valuable than excitement. The sixth advantage is clarity of standards. When you're single after 60, you're not operating from desperation. You're not settling because you fear being alone. You know what you want, and more importantly, you know what you're no longer willing to tolerate. Years of experience have taught you what works and what doesn't, what drains you and what sustains you, what you value and what you can live without. And that clarity creates discernment. If you were to enter a relationship, it would be because someone genuinely adds to your life. Not because you need companionship to feel complete, not because you're afraid of loneliness, but because the connection is real, mutual, and enhances rather than complicates. That level of discernment is rare, and it only comes from having spent enough time alone to know the difference between wanting someone and needing someone. Being single allows you to maintain those standards without compromise. You're not lowering the bar because you're lonely. You're not accepting less because you think it's the best you can do. You're simply waiting, or not waiting, for something that genuinely meets the life you've built. And if it never comes, you're okay, because you've already built something sustainable, something fulfilling, something that doesn't require anyone else's participation to feel complete. Now we come to the seventh and most important advantage. Peace becomes non-negotiable. After years, sometimes decades, of navigating relational complexity, conflict, compromise, and emotional labor, many men reach a point where they've rebuilt something precious: internal stability, calm, a life structured entirely around what brings them peace. And once that peace is established, the idea of introducing anything that threatens it becomes unthinkable. This is not about avoiding connection. It's about protecting what you've worked so hard to create. Because, from experience, that relationships, even good ones, introduce turbulence. And turbulence at this stage is no longer something you're willing to absorb. You've earned your peace. You've structured your life around it. And you're not willing to trade it, not for companionship, not for intimacy, not for the promise of something better. At this stage, peace is not loneliness, it is choice. And that choice, when honored fully, creates a quality of life that partnership often cannot match. Being single does not mean rejecting love. It doesn't mean closing yourself off to connection. It simply means that connection, if it happens, must meet a higher standard. It must enhance rather than complicate. It must respect your autonomy rather than erode it. It must add to the peace you've built rather than threaten it. And if that kind of connection never appears, you're okay, because you've already built something complete. At this stage of life, the goal is not to avoid love. It is to never trade peace for it, because peace, once found, is too valuable to risk. And the men who choose to remain single after 60 are not giving up. They're protecting what they've built. And that protection, quiet as it is one of the most powerful choices a man can make. Do you prefer partnership or independence at this stage of life? Comment below with your perspective. And subscribe to Femme Psychology with Emma for more depth on life stage psychology that actually matters.